Hello, hello. We are back. This is the Thais Show. So glad to have you. I am here to interview yet another fantastic guest that is going to speak to us about his journey and God's purpose and plan for his life. You can watch us on YouTube, but you can also listen on radio, WMEG, tune in, and Apple Podcasts as well. All right, so we are going to jump right in. Again, I am Thais. I am your host, of course. This is the Thais Show. And feel free to follow on Instagram, The Thais Show, and as well on the YouTube channel, The Thais Show. All right, so I have with me today another illustrious guest. And today I have, and this is actually by now, if you've been following the episodes, you know that I will definitely interview some ministers and pastors and some clergy from time to time. Okay, because the main content of the platform is for him to talk about his journey and for you to be encouraged and inspired to also follow your plan, your purpose, to understand and know what your not only what your passion is, but to follow your purpose. Okay, that's how we want to live. All right, so I have with me today Mr. Carol Jackson. He is a minister. Thank you, Carol, for coming on.
Long time no see.
Yeah,
Thank you for
definitely,
having me.
definitely. So Carol is saying that because we actually used to work together years ago. Many years ago. Okay, but as I posted that I was looking for some writers, some authors, and definitely always open to the ministers coming on to talk about their journey, and who pops up? Mr. Jackson. So you are, and when we used to work together, everybody, okay, we sold cars. we sold cars. I have not been in that profession for so long. It wasn't my purpose.
Wow,
It wasn't.
hear you.
It was
I'm still selling cars, as you can see my shirt.
we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into
Mhm.
that. Look, you probably be telling them that God said they need to buy this vehicle today.
Ah, mm.
Look, make them feel guilty, right? If they don't
Right,
leave if
right.
they don't leave with a vehicle. You know what? I heard the word.
Mhm.
Oh, let me stop. I like to have fun. Okay, so yeah, so you were a minister now, but we met because we worked at the same, ended up at the same job. You were already there, and
Mhm.
I ended up there and selling cars, and we became friends and cool and everything. But get into, please, like, your journey, really from there, because yes, this is where you started and you still are selling cars today, but as I've let the audience know, you are a minister. So we want to get into your story, your story. We can
Oh,
inspire and encourage some folks.
well, I hope this is encouraging. As I wrote in my bio, when I was born, my mom couldn't bring me home. She had to sign over custody to my father's dad, which is my grandmother who raised me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the hospital for 3 months. But before then, her family was trying to get her to abort me, to get rid of me, put me up for adoption, and she just refused.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I got my stubbornness from her.
Hmm.
And so, what really hit me was while my grandma was raising me, I just was a bad kid. I did things to get kicked out of elementary school, not like high school or anything like that. I mean, I was horrible. And she said something to me. She says, if you don't straighten up, you're not going to get past the 10th grade. And I don't want to bury you.
Mm.
And a couple of weeks later, I had joined the church and got baptized. And when my uncle heard about it, because he was staying at the house too, he was in college, he was going to Howard.
Mm.
And my aunt was going to University of Wisconsin, so they're only 9 and 10 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
So I pretty much grew up with my aunt and uncle. And once I got baptized, and I came home, and he said, "You got baptized there?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "Start reading John's Gospel, the Gospel of John." I was like, "Okay." So I was reading the King James, and I'm 11 years old, so you know how that was.
Mm-hmm.
And so he came into my room and he says, "Look," he gave me an NIV. And if anybody knows, the NIV version is written on a fourth grade level, just like the newspaper. And I was able to understand what I was reading. And once I got done with the Gospel of John, he says, "Now you got to know how to be a Christian. So I need you to read Romans."
Mm.
And I read half of Romans. And then I was like, you know what? I want to know what happens at the end. And I flipped. I flipped to Revelation
Revelation.
and just started reading.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, right. I just started reading,
Mm-hmm.
and my uncle would always, take me like a fishnet. It used to be a big gathering of a people. It was a Christian outing, camping, and all kinds of music and everything, and preaching and
Mm-hmm.
teaching. He used to take me there. Teen Haven, which is in Pennsylvania, I think they still have it, where young teenagers go, and they learn what it is to become a man now that they're teenagers, and how to get, control anger and stuff, like, because that's what I was angry. I was really angry because
Mm-hmm.
I thought my mother didn't want me. And then my mother calls the house. This is, I'm in high school now. I go to Blue, Big Bad Blue, and I learned a lot because my uncle just showed me a lot. So I was always in the Bible and then reading stuff outside the Bible. Like, he had books on the occult, witchcraft, Satanism, you know, masking and unmasking. The backwards, when you play records backwards, the messages that was in it. And
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I was reading that stuff, and I still got a couple of those books here at my house that I just took and never gave back. And
Mm-hmm.
so well, my phone rang. I'm home with my friends and we doing stuff we ain't supposed to be doing. And I answer the phone, and it's my mom, my biological mother. And she hung up. As soon as I said
Mm-hmm.
hello, because me and my father, my grandmother, my brothers, we all sound the same. So when I said hello, she hung up. And
Mm-hmm.
then she called back, and I says hello. And she says, "Little Carol," because my father's Big Carol. I says, "Hello, who is this?" She said, "This is your mother." Then
And you were how old then?
I was 15. My birthday was like in 30 days.
Hmm. Okay.
And I hung up. And then my grandfather, he was in the front room. He's like, "Who's that they called?" I was like, "Some lady said she my mother." My mother. And he was like, "Oh, snap." And so my grandmother got home from work. She was a teacher. She taught at elementary school, Neville Thomas Elementary School, and another one in Northeast. I can't remember the name of it. But when she came home from work, my grandfather told her, and she called. She already had my mother's number. My mother had been calling my grandmother for years. to check up on me. And so she called her back, and she wanted to meet me. So for my birthday, my grandmother and grandfather took me to meet my mother. Sorry. And so it was awkward. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think my aunt still got the pictures that we took. When I met her, and I met my sister. Um, that she had, and I learned that I had two other brothers that were taken
Mm.
from her. Yeah, they were one and two. They were taken from her because my mother had seizures.
Hmm.
And after
Okay.
that, I stopped thinking about myself, and I started thinking about other people. And so I go to church one Sunday with my grandmother and my grandfather, and I wanted to talk to the pastor. But the only person I could, the closest I could get was the assistant pastor. And I told him, I says, I think I've been called to preach. And he says, really? I was like, yes. And he's name is James Terrell. He's the pastor of Second Baptist Church in
Mm-hmm.
DC. It is a historical black church. It was part of the Underground Railroad. Started in
Wow.
1988. Yeah. And the story was told to me after I told them this by the deacons, is that they laughed when I told them that I was called to preach. And so after that, I always liked to, because my uncle had a bunch of comic books, I read them. He even had Christian comic books that I read, and I would try to, take, this book right, this book right here, this conversation book right here, and
Mm-hmm.
I would, try to draw pictures. I couldn't draw worth nothing, but I would, have a storyline and everything, and that's where I started writing. And I bounced around the high schools because my grandparents passed, and I ended up joining the Navy. And the reason why I joined the Navy was because my biological mother's brother-in-law was in the Navy. Her father was in the Navy, and my aunt was dating a guy in the Navy at the time, and he was around me a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
he told me, he said, if you go in the military, go in undesignated. I says, why? Why not pick a school? He's like, no, because if you pick a school, you stuck with that MOS or
Oh
that
yeah, with the type of job
job.
that
I
you
was
do.
like,
Mm-hmm.
so I listened to him, and I took the ASVAB, and apparently I did great in math because they stuck me straight in engineering.
Mm.
And some of the people on the boat, I can't say boat, I'm sorry, that's blasphemy. In the Navy, some people on the ship, they were Christians, and they would have Bible studies, and I would go to their Bible studies and everything like that,
Mm-hmm.
just still keeping the word in me. Matter of fact, some people might not remember DC Talks. There was a Christian group, and they did rap, and I listened to them, a couple of other artists, Christian artists that rap. I still listen to Christian rap today, and because I was raised up in the rap culture, and so they laughed at me then too. And then after being on the ship 1 year, I realized what job I wanted, and I went to the chief at the time. Chief gas turbine technician is what they wanted me to be, and I was like, I don't want to do this. I want to be a dispersing clerk. It's like, well, you're a fireman. You can't cross rate the seaman. I was like, I was told I could. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, everybody, I stopped, all my free time, I was in dispersing, learning how to be a dispersing clerk. I did all the qualifications, had the book signed and everything, and they kept coming to me. Why ain't your book signed for for the job? It's like that's not what I want to do. I want to be a dispersing clerk. In this time frame, I was playing football in the Navy and I boxed in the Navy.
Really?
Yeah, I won base championship 91. I think I got the plaque now. It hung up in my mom's house until I moved to Georgia. And
Now,
go
I
ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but there's a lot
I
of
know.
unpacking
I
that
got
we need to, that we need to do here.
go ahead.
I'm going to take it all the way back to you said you were a bad kid.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, in my profession, as I do psychiatric rehab,
Hmm.
I work with adults, but I started with kids. I still work with kids.
Amen.
So I just don't like to hear bad kid. Okay. We hear bad kid, we hear bad seed, and you know, and all kinds of colloquialisms for children that have issues.
That's
Okay.
right.
Which in some form or fashion everybody does, you know.
Right.
Kids and adults.
Hmm.
So I mean, of course you were getting into a lot of trouble in school. Of course you were angry,
Hmm.
okay? Because of the fact that your mom gave you up. Okay.
That's what I
Now,
thought.
or that's what you thought.
Right.
Now I heard you say that there was push from other family members,
From her family,
from
yes.
her family.
Hmm.
You know why that is? Was that because of her illness?
It might have been, I don't know, but I never
Mm,
asked her family. Only thing I was at this point in my life was happy to have her in my life,
right.
and then knowing that I got other family, I
Mm-hmm.
got other family.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I'd have been named Antonio Brown, and
Hmm.
in and out of foster homes. So
Mm.
yeah, I
Right.
was just happy. Uh,
Right. Which just goes to show you that at no matter what age,
hmm.
you know, very young, even before you're born, we have to realize that God has his hand in the whole situation,
That's right.
you know. Okay, so moving on a bit.
Hmm.
So you I also heard you say that you would get that you're when you answer the phone and it
Hmm.
was your mom on the phone,
Yeah.
she had been calling prior
Right.
to
Even
that.
yeah, even
And
when I was
so
living with my father a few times, for a short period of time, she would call my grandmother to check on me.
so do you know what the barrier was for the connection, for the lack of connection rather?
I think because she was epileptic, the excitement of even seeing me may have her have an episode.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
she just kept her distance, I guess, until she was brave enough to
Mm-hmm.
want to see me.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Hmm.
she was always there. My father was there until he got addicted. But at that
Oh,
time, I
yeah.
was already grown. I was
Mm.
I was already 17, and I already knew my path.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
the the great thing about all of this is my father and mother are married, and they've been married for 27 years.
Hmm.
Yes. um, my faith led my father and my mother back to church.
Mm-mm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I, I DC General, where I was born, I I dropped my aunt off at the AA to be clean, the rehab center. While I was home at the boot camp, I dropped her off there, and then convinced her to come back to church.
How old were you then?
I was 20 years old. Well, no, I was 19. I was 19 years old then. I was 22 when I took my mom to see my father because he was hooked. He was hooked, and my uncle Scotty was hooked, and they was living together. And he went cold turkey after seeing my mom again.
Wow. That is some story. And the reason why I asked how old you were is because I in following the storyline, I can hear that you were young, you know.
Mhm,
So to be 19 and your immediate parts of your immediate family, I mean,
mhm,
that had heavy influence on you, you know, were going through addictions, and at 19 you're taking your aunt to be
mhm.
treated to rehab. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot for a 19-year-old.
Okay. Apparently, I switched chairs because this one keep dropping.
I saw your chat drop the first time.
Yeah, it kept moving. I'm like, she gonna think I'm getting shorter. But yeah, that was it. Was then I got stationed at Fort Meade, so I was going to church, my home church, on a
Hmm.
regular basis. I was teaching Sunday school, and everything was looking up for me. I had a son, and I was married, and then all of a sudden, I'm getting ready to get transferred back to Norfolk to go to another ship, and I couldn't stay with my son's uh, mom. I couldn't stay with my wife. She wanted a divorce, and so I told her whatever papers you need me to sign, you know, that unequally yoked part. Yeah, there was
Mm,
some other things too that she was doing um, uh, while I was out to sea and things like that that her friends told me about.
okay.
Once
Hmm.
her friends got to know me, they just spilled their guts to me, and so um, I moved. I moved back to Norfolk again to be stationed, and um, I took a friend with me and her daughter, and I helped raise that daughter. And we came and moved back to Maryland when I got out of the military,
Hmm.
and I still was going to church, and then like 2 years later,
Hmm.
the assistant pastor, who's now the pastor of the church, said that many of the church members want you to become a deacon. I was like, yeah, but I'm called to preach. He's like, and he looked at me and he smiled. He said, deacons preach too. And so I went through deacons training, um, and then um, I ran into another woman problem because um, the Ashley's mom, she was like, I don't want to be married to a preacher.
Hmm.
And yeah, I was like, it's not as bad as you think, you know. I still have fun. We still have fun. I just don't do the crazy stuff no more. The stuff that is not pleasing to God. And
Okay. Hmm.
at this time, Ashley was grown. Well, she was about to graduate high school, and so I went to seminary. And I was a deacon. And Washington Baptist Seminary is not an ordinary seminary. Classes start at 6 o'clock at night and don't end sometimes to 10:30 at night because Dr. Fowler liked to go to other people's churches and preach, and we was his choir. The students of seminary, we were his choir.
Okay, well, I'm not. Then I
So
guess I'm spoiled because because I'm in seminary and it's online.
right. Well, I did some.
And it's
I went to
online.
yeah, I
So
went to Grand Canyon. I had to leave because that was too much on me.
mhm,
Because
mhm.
but the beautiful thing was he looked at me and he says, "I'll mentor you." And so he would let me preach. And I think it was 2005. He let me preach. He let me preach Good Friday, and I did the last word, the last 7 words of Christ.
Okay.
I did the last word.
The last of the seven
Yeah.
last. Okay.
And then that Thanksgiving, he asked me to, because we always did Thanksgiving breakfast. He had a the men's ministry had a Thanksgiving breakfast, and I
Mhm.
preached. And after I was finished, he's like, "Now we got to get you licensed." It's like, okay, so he let me preach a morning service. It was Men's Day, and so I preached that morning service. Um, and then after doing the car thing, I was going. You remember Steve Foreman, don't you?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going traveling with him, going to churches, but they were talking about the credit, but I was teaching what God says about money and forgiveness of debt, which is in scriptures in Deuteronomy 15 and 16.
Mhm.
And I go through how um, our bankruptcy laws come from the scriptures. Every 7 years, there's a jubilee, which means forgiveness of debt. So, in the Jewish custom, if somebody owed you and they were repaying a debt at the year of jubilee, they were free from that debt. Even if you took their land, you had to give them their land back. And so,
Hmm.
yes, and so that's where a lot of our laws that's on the books, they come from scripture. And so that was my stick. And I was all over. I was in Ohio preaching. I was in North Carolina preaching, Pennsylvania, you know, and but I was like a seminar preacher. So after I was finished, I would take questions, you know, and I remember one time this lady said, "You should be a politician." I was like, "No, that's all right. I talk a lot about politics, but no, I can't do that."
Mhm.
And so I made a vow. This was in 2010. And this is after Ashley's mom, she moved here to Hinesville where I stay. And Ashley moved with her. And I made a vow to God. I said, Lord, if you just let me, you know, have my friend. She was my best friend. I met her when I was delivering pizzas at Domino's. We went everywhere together. We were not boyfriend and girlfriend. We just did a lot of stuff together.
Mhm.
And I just prayed. And one day I get a phone call. I'm selling cars at Monster Auto across the street from Eastern Motors on St. Barnabas Road. And it's Ashley. And she's crying because her mom's new husband and put his hands on her.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, yeah. And so I hang up with Ashley, and then she sent me two pictures. She had a huge knot over top of her eye,
Mm, mm.
and yeah, I called.
That look, that could be a whole oof, that could be
Yes,
a whole nother yeah, episode of this show of this show right there. Oh my goodness.
but what happened was that that right there reconnected me with my best friend. I
Mhm.
hung up the phone with Ashley, and the last thing I said was, "I'll see you soon."
Mhm.
All her cousins called me. Did Ashley call you? Did Ashley call you? I said, "Yes, she did." When we leaving? I'll give you a call back. Then I got a call from her mother. Where are you at right now? I says, I'm at work. I'm at the dealership. She's like, oh, I thought you was on your way down here. I says, I'll see you soon. I had already called Enterprise, reserved the vehicle and everything. And I rounded up her nephew and a friend of mine who was stationed here for me. So he knew the area. And we drove down. We drove down and Mikey remembered where she lived at. So I got a hotel room and just me and Mikey went over to the house and I'm praying, you know, when I
Mhm.
get there and I go into the house. She lets me in, lets Mikey in, and they get to arguing between one another and they're, mother and daughter. And I says, let's let me take Ashley. Me and Mikey take Ashley out and we go to it was a Waffle King up the street from her. And I sat down with Ashley and just we just talked. Um After that we went back to the house. And when we went back to the house, her mom had calmed down and she got to talking. She just told spilled her guts to me and told me everything. And I thought it was over with. I says, if I have to come back and get Ashley and take her to her dad's house in Maryland, then I'll do that. And so God answered one prayer. I get back, I'm back up there, and a month later I get a phone call. You need to come get your daughter. I can't do this. You need to come. She done pressed charges on my husband and this, that, and the third. And so I went to go get Ashley and I drove her back, and she went to go stay with her biological father. And I went back to working, going to church, doing what I was normally doing, and helping out in the church and everything. And I get
Mhm.
a phone call 1 month later, and she's like, "I want to come home." And I was like, I just got a house in Upper Marlboro. I was like, when? She said, I don't know, but I got to leave this place. This is the only way I can get away from it. And so all of a sudden, bam, now I'm entangled. And so I'm asking God, okay, what is going on? What are you telling me?
Mhm.
And so I move Ashley into my house. And then we're scheduling, and all of a sudden, 2 weeks before the date that I was going to come down to get her, he gets locked up for DUI. He was already on probation for driving under the influence. So now they got him for driving under the influence and without a license, suspended license. And so I just told her, you need to pack up as much as you can pack up. And when I get there, we got to put your whole house in a truck. And the day I got there, we I had all her nieces, nephews, and her cousins that lived there. And in 5 hours, we loaded her whole house in that truck. You,
Mm.
we drove all the way back, and um, part of the way back, she rode with me in the truck, and she was talking to me and saying I don't want a relationship right now. I'm just trying to do this and that, and I'm like, I understand. And because I ain't had no furniture, I put her whole house in my house. I'm still going to work. I stopped selling cars. I went back to doing fire protection, but I had an office in Largo because we was doing credit repair with Steve and them. So I had an office in Largo
Okay.
and
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, and everything was okay and whatnot. And then, like, after being there about 4 months, she was like, "Okay, I'm ready to go back to my house." Well, her cousin had already rented her house out. So
Mm.
yeah, so she couldn't, well, you got tenants in there. They got a year lease right now, so you can't, she's like, I'll go back and stay with Keisha, her cousin who moved with her. And something just said to me, go with her. And so we talked about it. I came down and visit for a birthday. I took everybody out to Ruth Chris and paid for everything. And, I wasn't rich, but I could do it. We in the South, it don't cost that much. So and yeah, so when I seen the bill, I was like, that's all. I got that. And then
And look, you know the difference because you done been
I've been to Ruth Chris before.
you done been north and south.
For two people, I'm like, wait a minute. So, but then
Mhm.
we talked, and I says, I'm gonna come down. I'm gonna come back with you. She's like, okay. And so when she moved the people out the house, we brought everything back down, moved her back into her house, and I gave my job a 1 month notice. I told them March 1st is my final day here. I told everybody in my office that I'm leaving. I'm moving to Georgia, and I can do everything online. So you can send me mortgage documents online, credit repair stuff. You can just send it to me. I'll just send it back. We'll work that way.
Mhm.
And then, man, I get down here, and I go to church. So I go to the first church with one aunt, right? And she came with me. And when Ashley came, Ashley and my son, they still go to church. They my son is a music producer, so him and his buddies, they go
Oh,
around the
nice.
church. Yeah, and they run the cameras and the audio and everything for them.
Okay, audio visual guys.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they're called the orchestrators. And then my Ashley she does spoken word. She's a Christian rap artist. Uh,
Oh,
yes,
my own heart.
yeah. And so during all this time, I'm still writing short stories, and so I believe she found my book because I can hear some of the lyrics from some of the stuff that I wrote.
Oh, look,
And
tell her that was intellectual property. She
you know,
uses anything, you gonna need some payment.
right? But it was it.
Royalties.
I didn't mind. And then she has a video called Blackness on YouTube that she did, and I was just like, God, thank you for even through all my mess, my children still, still to this day, they
And
knew
and
he
and
was right.
enemy attacks.
Yeah,
A
and
lot. Like I said, we had quite a bit to unpack. Was a lot.
yeah, but how, and then I went to one church. It was just like Second Baptist. It was small, and everything. And then The next time I visited, I went to another church, which is where I'm at now, well, with the members, Mount Zion Chapel, and man, I, I was, it was this, my spirit was like, this is your home.
Mm.
And I moved down there, I started going to the church. I joined the church. I tell the pastor, I am a minister. I'm not licensed. So he says, from now on, I want you to come sit with the ministers. Because when I go to Bible study, I'm answering questions that people don't have the answers to,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
explanation. And that came from me just in the Bible. I can't remember verses like addresses, but I can remember the verses. And so, man, I was I thought this was where I was going to be at. The church was growing, and then one day the overseer of the church came down and preached, and it was just like a dark cloud just came over the church. And the next Sunday, the Pastor Johnson stepped down. When he stepped down, I came back to church the next day. It was like 4 people there, and so I went to the Bible study, went to church service. They brought down a minister from the other church to help out the pastor that they installed.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, God, what's going on? And then I got a phone call, and Ricky was like, Pastor Johnson wants to know if what you gonna do. I was like, where y'all at? It's like we at the hotel. I was like, okay, so it was Country Inn, and we was using that ballroom for church.
Okay.
And I went there, and all of a sudden, the spirit was. It wasn't the building; it was the people. And they came up with the name Freedom Worship Center. Um, and he let me preach Mother's Day, and I preached my mother's testimony
Wow. And what
on Mother's
scriptures
Day.
did you use for that
And
sermon?
so, um, Sarah, the I think yeah, Sarah. What's that? First Samuel. I can't remember
Okay.
the address.
Mm-hmm.
Is where Sarah cried out to God, "If you give me a son, I'll dedicate him to the church."
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I, you know, and so basically, from there I preached, and the like a couple of years later, he let me preach here and there, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and this is on Sunday. And then tragedy struck. Um, the people I left at my office to do, the continue by the DOJ and other three-letter agencies, and they kept asking about me, and they were telling them. And then one day, I wasn't selling cars. I was working at the prison, and I was preaching at the prison. I would be in a cell block in a dorm, and people would ask me questions, and I would be like that Bible answer man, you know, on while I was working. It's like, man,
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting paid. I'm getting paid to preach and teach. And so, but they kicked in my door, uh, postal service in HUD and Liberty County, and it was all because of audits. Because I used to do mortgage audits. I was I was the main reason people was going to court fighting for their homes, um, uh, suing the banks, suing the debt collectors. I was the reason because that's what we
Okay. Because yes, you can.
Yeah, and so,
Hmm.
but yeah, they locked me up, and uh, I was in jail for 30 days. I went to 7 different penitentiaries and jails, uh, and it took them 30 days to get me back to Maryland in order for the judge to let me go free and give me a trial date. Um,
Look, disrupting the city like Paul.
and so basically, with that case, I got convicted of conspiracy to commit wire fraud because they said, well, they was paying you. Well, out of the $500,000 that they could find, I only got 67,000, and that's over 4.5 years. That ain't a lot. And I had customers, I had clients in California, Arizona, Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana. I had clients everywhere.
Hmm.
And so, but it was Maryland where I had a foothold because that's where I started, and people were coming to me and my group. Um, but that's what I got pegged with. And when I came home on, it was August 19th, and that's when my pastor licensed me. Even though I hadn't been to trial yet, he licensed me. And I preached a sermon that day, and boom, I got a license to preach from Tom N. Johnson, the third. And so,
Wow.
yeah, and so,
That is some story because he must have heard,
mm-hmm,
I mean, the Holy Spirit. I mean, he heard that you are to get him licensed.
mm-hmm,
This man has done nothing wrong. You are to get him licensed.
yep,
And so after all these years, and you were traveling, preaching,
mm-hmm,
had preached many years prior that initial sermon,
yep,
last word of the seven last words. And so now you're in jail for 30 days
mm-hmm.
and you get licensed before you're
Before I go to trial,
released.
the trial
Dang.
lasted. Yeah, it lasted a week. 11 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and wire fraud. They got the wire fraud part. I was the conspirator. They said that I taught them how to swindle people out of money. But a lot of my clients never paid me because they couldn't afford it. I would just give them their audits. Just go see Phil so he can show you how to do this and the third. I remember Phil calling me one day. He said, "Hey man, he ain't pay you." I said, "Phil, help him. There's nothing I can do with that audit. I already did it. They need the help. I don't need the money. It's not about the money. It's about them people in their homes. They've been in their house 10, 15, 20 years, and they got memories there. Help them fight." And so when I got home, they sent me home with an ankle monitor. My pastor wrote me a letter. My old boss at the prison wrote me a letter.
Mm-hmm.
A friend in Georgia wrote me a letter. And my pastor in DC wrote me a letter. Him and his wife. Judge Terrell was appointed by Clinton to be a judge in Washington, D.C. And her husband wrote me a letter. And so
Mm,
when I gave that to my attorney, and the
that's
fact that,
favor right there.
yeah, and he was like, "Well, what do you do?" And I showed him my Facebook page and the car group page. She's like, "Man, y'all do a lot, giving toys to families and uh, feeding the homeless, like on Christmas Day. Just show up to somebody's house. They don't know we coming, and we just bringing toys, for the kids because they didn't have a Christmas. Going to the orphanage, giving toys. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they don't know we coming. but I team up with another car group and we just go. Um, I have a um, I'm the president of Forever Riding Car Club. We're dormant now, but I'm also the president of the Southeast Regional Car Council, which is a group of car clubs and truck clubs and motorcycle. It's a group of clubs, and we meet once a month, and they put on benefit shows for all kinds of causes. Wounded Warrior Project, K9
Nice.
Battle Buddies. They
Mm,
do. We do for us. We do for the Manor House here in Hinesville. They feed the homeless,
mhm,
and they help the homeless find shelter and clothing and stuff. And so we donate to them. My church donates to the Manor House.
mhm,
Gabriel House is the orphanage that we go to. Matter of fact, there's a show that I'm doing on the 8th that's benefiting the Gabriel House. It's an orphanage here in Liberty County, and so that's that was what I was doing. But my mission now
mhm,
is my wife. That is my mission. Uh, my wife has dementia with sundown,
mhm.
and so I seen it as a kid.
Uh-huh.
But as a kid, you don't experience it like every day, all day. You don't
Right.
experience it. You just know grandma don't know who you are one day, and then the next day, you the best grandchild on the planet. You know, and so that's my mission. When I got married to my wife, we were ministers in the church. Well, we still ministers in the church. My wife is an evangelist. When I say
Mhm.
when I say I've watched her pray and stop the winds and the rain,
Hmm.
yes. I came home from work and we was in the middle of a hurricane. I came home from work and she was praying and I went to say something to her. She waved me off. So I went in the bedroom being quiet and she got finished praying and walked into the bedroom and the wind stopped. Because she said she started praying when the tree fell down in the backyard.
Mhm.
And when she came into the bedroom, the wind stopped. I looked outside and I was like, and she looked at me, she said, God got us. And then she told me, she's like, if you look out the window at night, you might see a little white light flash past the window. Like, what's that? Those are the angels that protect us.
Hmm. And I'll tell you, years ago, I I'm not gonna say I wouldn't have believed, but would have been like, what? now, now, you know,
Yes.
now that I'm more spiritually mature,
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, I know, I've seen it,
I
hmm
mean,
hmm
we just visit in the church. She know the pastor. We just visiting. I'm like, I ain't got to do no work today. Yes, I'm a minister, but I ain't got to do no work today because if you show up at the church and they know you're a minister, they're gonna put you to work.
Put you to work, of course.
I'm sitting down, and then all of a sudden, Apostle Brown stands up. Oh, we got Lynn here today. Lynn, come up here and give us a word. And her favorite scripture, Second Chronicles, I think it's 7:14, and she'll preach from there.
I'm writing it down. hmm
And I'm like, and I'm listening to her and she connecting with people. Like one lady, she put her hand on. She says, "You doing something you ain't got no business doing." And guess what? God revealed it to me. You a witch, ain't you? And that lady looked at my wife, and I'm looking at her, and she was like like frozen. Her eyes like she seen a ghost. And my wife ministered her right then and there. and they laid hands and everything, and
Mm,
she gave her that lady gave her life to Christ. See, some people diddle daddle in the occult thinking it's harmless. They think
uh-huh.
harmless. They, read your horoscope, go down, get your palm read. They think that's harmless.
Mm-hmm.
All of us have familiar spirits because they know our whole life. So the palm reader is just a medium. She's telling you all about yourself. You don't know this person from a can of paint because of that familiar spirit.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so, man, and so now she's in this state, and the only thing I could do is pray because there's no cure. They give her medicine to calm her down, but I'm like, Lord, I want Lynn back.
Right.
We
Exactly.
we supposed to be in a team,
Right.
you
And
know.
but you know exactly why it's all happening. And for those are listening that have followed, followed us through this through this hour,
Mm-hmm.
understand that not just dementia, but any of these illnesses, mind you, that are taking away your physical abilities,
Mm-hmm.
your mental abilities, are spiritual attacks.
Mm-hmm.
It's warfare. Read your warfare Bible, not just your concordance,
Mm-hmm.
your black Bible that grandma gave you with your name in it,
Right.
you know, but read
Mm-hmm.
the spiritual warfare Bible.
That's right. She got one up here.
Yeah, yeah, because
Mhm.
it will open your eyes.
He attacks
It will
from
open your eyes.
everywhere.
He's attacking her mind
Mm-hmm.
because she is so powerful and has had so much of a call on her life and a purpose that the enemy is afraid. I mean, you just said it.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing souls to Christ,
That's right.
turning from fortune telling, witchcraft,
Mm-hmm.
cults.
That's
See,
right.
we go to church. We go to church every week and hear the good stuff.
That's right.
God is here. He'll never leave you or forsake you. God heals. God is love. And we should hear those things.
That's right.
But what about the darkness? See, a lot of people they don't want to see that part.
No.
And also don't want to be held accountable. We're not we're
There
not
it is.
not supposed to have our palms read. We're
Mm-hmm.
not supposed to sit and have somebody do a tarot card reading.
There you go.
There's not supposed to be any fortune telling at all.
If you want to know the future, you ask God. Just and look, when people ask me, did the groundhog see his shadow? I was like, that's fortune telling, right? Like what? It's like, yeah, you're looking to an animal for the future.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know the future, ask God. And if he don't tell you, it's for your own good.
Just to let us know if it's going to be a couple more weeks of
Right. Of snow.
winter or not. When spring is coming. Why do
Right.
we need to know these things?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we need to know these things? Your and we are wrapping up in just a moment, but your short stories. What typically has been the foundation of the short stories? Is that all, are they at all related to your life and
A lot of them are. Like I wrote a short story a few months ago about. I think it's in this. Wait a minute. I think it's in this book. But I wrote a short story about a man who gets thrown in jail because of his faith. This is uh, this is when persecution comes. We're supposed to
Mhm.
be persecuted when the Antichrist come on the scene, and so many Christians who kept their faith, and didn't do anything, didn't take the mark, they get thrown in jail. And this one person would preach every night. He would answer questions from the other inmates every night because they had him in solitary confinement when they cut the lights out because the guards would go to sleep. And most of the people in the cell started to believe.
Mhm.
And then one day when the guard came to do count, a lot of the cells were empty, including that one individual. I think I named him Jack. And but one of the inmates that really didn't believe, he was still there. Said, "What happened to everybody?"
Mhm.
And he told the guard, "Well, this might be it, but Jack told them that they're gonna be with God real soon." What? And he said Jesus is gonna take them away from here. So they open up his cell, take him down to the warden, and the warden asked, "What happened to? We lost half the prison." It's like, well, Jack been preaching every night, and he been telling people about Jesus every night. And I ended the story right there about Jack telling everybody that they came in contact with about Jesus.
Mhm. Mhm.
I wrote another short story about the preacher and the prostitute. How the prostitute every Sunday at a certain time she'd go sit outside on her stoop and watch the church let out because she was fascinated with the young pastor. He was the youth pastor. Then one day she went to the church after church and asked the pastor could he come and pray with her. She had other things in mind.
Mhm.
And by the time the pastor got to her house and he knocked on the door, she opened the door in tears. And as he prayed with her, the Holy Spirit entered her and she became a believer and ended up being a member of the church. She ended up started to sing in the church.
Mhm.
And then after a while, her and that pastor did get married, but that's the happy ending. I
Yeah.
had I wrote
Yeah.
another I wrote another one that I use in a lot of my sermons, and it's about a man and his two sons. The story is about him taking care of his two sons after his wife died in a car accident. And one day he's out, they're out in the backyard with their friends playing, and he was upstairs trying to build a shelf. Um, all of a sudden, they got silent in the backyard, and all of a sudden, he heard a loud scream, and it was one of his sons. And they were hitting this one boy with a 2x4.
Mhm.
And the father grabbed the 2x4 and told them to go in the house. Called 911, and when the ambulance got there, the little boy was dead. And then the police came, and because the father took the 2x4, and his sons was in the bedroom window, called his sister, told her to come get his boys, and he went to jail for life because he was accused of killing the kid. 10 years later, the boys go to visit him in jail, and they ask him, "Dad, why did you take the blame for us?" He said, "Because Jesus took the blame for me and you."
Wow.
And that's the reason why I use that one a lot because it's touching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like I said, I get something in my head and I start writing. I'm working on something now, and I got a little block. I'm trying to finish it, but yeah, I wrote stories in the Navy. Uh, I used to write other sailors letters so they can send home to their girlfriends and their wives. But
They valued your penmanship.
I um and I noticed some of my friends, they're ministers. One guy went to elementary school. He was in special ed. Like I said, I was that kid. I got put in special ed, and he's an apostle now. He has his own church. Him and his wife. Um, Another friend of mine, James West. I used to bully his little brother in elementary school. He's a minister at his church now. Charles Parr. Charles Parr. I gave him the idea of a rental car service. We used to go to the auction and buy cars. And I said, you know what, a rental car service will make a lot more money than selling cars. And he started. I remember I came into his office before I got my office. He was raking in $25,000 to $3,000 a day. People making their payments on their car.
Woo! Mm, mm,
He's a
mm.
pastor now. He has his own church. It's I believe I believe God has me meet certain people for a certain reason.
Yes.
Change. And I'm like confused, like, wait a minute, this guy was this way and this guy was that way. Michael Palmer, and he grew up in the neighborhood with me. He got convicted of a crime he never did. Spent 20 years in Lawton.
Mm.
They sent him out to Oklahoma because they shut down Lawton. And when he came home and I talked to him, he says, man, I've been teaching Bible study at prison for the last 6, 7 years.
Hmm.
And so, you know, people I didn't expect, but now, I'm older and I see them. Hey, what you doing? They pastors, they ministers, apostles, and prophets, and I'm like, oh my goodness, you know,
Mm.
you you, you was there. You might have planted the seed, didn't know that you planted the seed, and then
Right.
moved on about your business. I was at a convention once, and this young guy, he was a white guy from West Virginia. His father was a pastor, and he said, "I want to talk to you for a minute." So we went up to my room, and I had my Bible out and everything. He says, "You a Christian?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I don't know if my dad's a Christian or not." It's like, "Why? He racist." I was like, "So?" He's like, "He preach on Sunday, and then when he come home, he crack a beer and talk about how black people this, black people that." And I was like, remember, and I sat him down. I said to him, I said, listen, we all have our own journey with Christ. You know that what your dad doing is wrong, and the only thing you can do is confront him with it, and then leave it alone
Mm-hmm.
because now you're gonna let God do the rest.
Right.
Because that's your dad, that's your father. So the only command, the only commandment in the Bible that comes with a blessing is honor thy mother and thy father, and your days shall be long. I says, confronting, humble yourself, ask God to give you the words, and let it go.
Mm-hmm.
I says, as long as you stay in your word, and as long as you doing the right thing, and you're asking God to please put you in His perfect will, you'll be okay. I prayed with that young man, and that was it. I don't know if he said anything to his father,
Right.
but these are the words that God, gave to me to
Gave
give to
gave
him,
you. Right.
you know. And
Mm-hmm.
and I tell people all the time, you never know who God gonna place in front of you that He wants you to give a word to, even
Yeah.
in passing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's a word of encouragement, like getting off from work one day and you at the light, the bums that hang out at the stoplight asking for this and that, and and you give them $1, and then that same bum says, "I see Christ in you, thank you," and walk off,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
you never see that person again, because we do sometimes entertain angels.
Right.
And
Right.
you're if you are not if you are not walking in the spirit, you could mess up a blessing. You could cause a curse on yourself. You all because you're not doing what God asked you to do.
Right. Moral of the story, stay obedient.
Yeah, just
Hmm.
obedience is better than sacrifice.
Yes.
And
Okay. All
and
right.
that's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm just being obedient to God because that's his child. And
Hmm.
he's bringing me through this for another testimony. Because as you heard
Yes.
today, I got plenty of them.
Right. That's
Amen.
because that's look, because that ministerial call been over your life for so long. For
I
so
mean,
long, it's just meant for you to preach and
mhm,
to lift people up and not and you're doing that without judgment.
right. That's what some people look at. Like when I talk to them about when I talk to them about witchcraft or palm reading or getting your zodiac, for the day, and I explained to them about the parable that Jesus taught about the demons or the that leave one body, and then you clean yourself up and think you okay, right? And then
Mm,
the demon come back and say, "Oh, it's all cleaned up in here now." And then he go invite 7 more friends to come join him, and then your life then got worse than what it was before.
right, right.
And so
Mm-hmm.
you know, I just tell people just have faith, even if you down. Also, still encourage people.
Still encourage people.
How can you be so happy? I was like, because God got me. I'm ready to go home. It- like, what you
Mm,
mean you ready to go home? This ain't our home, so I'm ready. But every time I wake up in the morning, it's like, all right, God, what do you have for me to do today?
and I love that you said that. That's exactly how we're supposed to wake up every
Mhm.
day. We
Mhm.
we thank him. We have the gratitude. We thank him for waking up, repent for sins,
Yeah,
and God, what is it that you have me to do today? What is my purpose? Why am I here? So many of us just do not. I still have the question, why am I here? What
yeah,
am I here for? But you know what? Being patient and not leaning on our own understanding,
that's right.
listening, stay quiet, meditate, and you will find out.
That's right.
So
Amen.
we're gonna wrap up on that. And your story has been, oh my goodness, it's been so heartfelt.
I'm
And I
I
would I would love to read some of your short stories.
I got you. Well, I got your email. I send you some. Sent my son some because they wanted to. They trying to do a production. They trying to do a TV series or something. Christian TV shows.
Hmm.
I sent them some. He said, "Yeah, we read some of them." I was like, "I ain't sending them no more. I want some money. I
I
paid for
was
the TV."
look,
I'm
here we go again with somebody else that need to be
right,
getting you some royalty money now. Intellectual property. What I say
right.
earlier.
I got you.
And I'm gonna tell you, that's wild that you just said that they're putting together a television series and they're reading your short stories because as you were talking before you said that, I heard TV series. I
Mm,
heard TV.
wow.
I heard TV. Okay. Mm.
Hmm.
All right. So we may be seeing some of these short stories become productions. It's going to
Hey,
become series, maybe Netflix.
you never know. And like I said, when you know, sometimes we know people in passing, and then when we reconnect, man, my son, if I can get my son hooked up with Thais, man, yeah, I can, and I because he always throwing something in my head, and I start
Mhm.
right, and I might not finish it, and then I get something else and start another story. But the the whole purpose of it is to help lead people to Christ and let them know that God is with you, and
Right.
even through everything. I wrote one
Mhm.
story about grandma and grandson, and how the grandson lost his parents, you know, in the airplane crash. I kind of like car crashes, the airplane crashes, but grandma raised, and he was smart, and he had an idea for to that would help people, but he had the money to do it. And he used to take
Mhm.
his grandma to church every Sunday for years after he got older, and work. And he always gave her money to put in the plate.
Mhm.
And one day she asked him to go to church with her. Got that he told her the story. And then when she came home, she invited some other people over to the house. And she said, my son has something that could benefit everybody, but he don't have the money to get it off the ground. And she went to one of her Bibles and she opened up, and it had all the money that he ever gave her to put in church in. And he said, Grandma, where you get that money from? She said, you. And he's like, well, I need 10,000. This is only 6,600. And the three people that came over started writing checks.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And yeah, I wrote a story like that. That I think I can't remember what sermon I used it in, but but yeah, you know,
I like that
it's
you're including your short stories
mhm.
in
Because
your sermons.
and the reason why I do it is because my testimony is PG-13, to say the least. So, you know, um, but I can take from that and make something and write something a little different, a lot cleaner, and put God all in it.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, Carol, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So appreciate it, and hearing your story. We just never know. What when we think about our own lives and what we've been through. Sometimes it can look like next to nothing once you hear somebody else's story.
There you go.
And I've had guests on that have overcome alcoholism and with former drug addictions
Hmm.
and other addictions. I mean, even overeating. So
Yeah.
you never know what people are going through. So it takes a person who is touched by God to be kind and not be judgmental, and also to spread the gospel, to spread the truth.
Hmm.
And but so I'm so glad to see that you are living your purpose, that you are living your purpose and God's plan for your life. That's what we want to see. All right,
Amen.
I'm here for
Amen.
it. We are here for it. All right. Well, again, thank you for coming on. This has been the Tai Show. So glad to have you.
Thank
These
you.
shows air every week, radio and podcast. Thank you. God bless. We are out.
God bless you and thank you.
You're welcome.